Welcome to EKU Then and Now. I'm your host, Paul Blanchard, and I spent 35 years at Eastern as a faculty member and administrator. The focus of this program is on prominent EKU faculty, staff, and alumni who have had a meaningful involvement at Eastern during its history of more than 100 years. They will comment on what Eastern has been like in its storied past, how it has changed, and what we might expect its future to hold. Joining me today for a discussion of EKU Then and Now are two prominent alumni, Dr. Skip Daugherty and Mr. Ron House. Ron and Skip came to EKU as freshmen in 1964 and began a strong friendship that has lasted nearly 45 years. Skip has had a long, varied, and productive career at EKU, serving for many years as Director of Student Activities and Dean of Student Development, and later as Associate Vice President and Executive Director of EKU's National Alumni Association. His current position at EKU is Special Events Coordinator. Skip has served the Richmond, Kentucky community in the leadership of dozens of organizations and programs. Ron House is also one of Richmond's leading active citizens, and he has had a distinguished business career in this community. For nearly 30 years, his company, Ron House and Associates, has provided financial and insurance services along with retirement, business, and estate planning. Ron also served as president of EKU's National Alumni Association in 2006 and 2007. Both Ron and Skip have bachelor's and master's degrees from EKU, and Skip has earned his doctorate in education at Indiana University. Gentlemen, I've been looking forward to this conversation for several weeks, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Thanks for inviting us.
Let me first ask you about how you both ended up at EKU on August 16th, 1964, again, almost 45 years ago. I know that date is significant to both of you. I believe athletics drew each of you here, at least in part. Ron, why don't you begin, and then Skip can jump in.
Okay, Paul. Coach Don Daly was coaching here, and if you might remember, Jack Jackson said he recruited him to come here and run track. He was helping Coach Kidd coach here. He was assistant coach. He came to my high school several times to recruit me for football.
And that was?
That was in the spring of '64.
In Dayton?
In Dayton, Ohio, and Dayton Colonel White. And so I wanted to also wrestle. Coach Kidd offered me a full scholarship to come here to play football, but I wanted to wrestle. I had several scholarships across the country, Division I schools, but they would not allow you to do two sports, and some smaller schools wouldn't either. But Coach Kidd made an exception, and that was a real special thing. Because he had been provided that opportunity, I learned several years ago that Coach Bear Bryant wanted Coach Kidd to come to UK and play football, and he said, Coach Bryant, I'd like to also play baseball. He said, no, you can't do that. So he came to Eastern, made All-American first team football, and played baseball, and he was always favorable to anybody that wanted to do other sports. We even had two players when Skip and I were playing. They played basketball, and I wrestled. Then we had people that ran track and baseball, so he was always allowed. Sometimes the assistant coaches didn't like that because it took people out of practice, spring practice, and other practice, but he would provide that opportunity. Also, there was the academics. I was strong academics for teachers and coaching, and that's what my interest was at that time. And I had three outstanding teammates that were older than me that had come here before from my high school. Bill Gaines and Jim Ratliff were two of them, and they were outstanding, the quarterback and the receiver. So I knew something about Eastern, but not a whole lot. And the friendly atmosphere on campus was another thing. And so Skip and I met on the first day on August the 16th, 1964, in front of Maddox Hall. That's where we lived our first year. And then we lived in O'Donnell Hall all the years after that. So each year, Skip and I go over on August 16th about 10 o'clock and just show up there for a little tradition.
A little reminiscing, huh?
Right.
Of course, you guys reminisce 24 hours a day, I think, sometimes.
I went to Consolidated High School, went from transfer to Fort Knox to North Hardin, Vine Grove and Rhineyville, Consolidated. And my junior year, they started a football program, and we didn't have a full season until my senior year. And I had a good year that year. And I had a math teacher that was an Eastern graduate. I forget her name. I wish I could, but she was very attractive. And she encouraged me to go to college. And I'm one of 7 children. That wasn't in my plans at the time, but she encouraged me. And my coach made a contact with Coach Kidd and sent some films. And He invited me down and did the thing, and he invited me to walk on. Ron was on scholarship. I was a walk on. I later earned a scholarship, but so I came down, and she drove me up here, and I paid my $35 deposit and got my $300 NDSL loan and came to college. And it was, like I say, August 16th. We arrived and started. And
now, what is it about your time here that was so special that you've now observed that for so long? That's
part of that is that we came to Eastern with 5,200 students at the time. There's plenty of place to park. Freshmen weren't allowed to have cars. We didn't have any cars. We didn't have radios. We had a radio and a suitcase. That's pretty much it. We had each other. And there weren't, organization. Our football team was with, a band of brothers. And that group, the Daugherty and Ron House group, and really Coach's first year as head coach. And it was a bonding time, and it was just a golden era as far as I'm concerned. And it just, we're all like guys, and we blended, and I mean, we're still best friends. And that's when we get together. You think the stories that Ron and I tell, we out here, all 40 or 50 of us. And of the group, of all the football team groups, the 60s group, the Daugherty and Rice Bowl group, is the one that comes back with the most numbers and the closest group. And we call each other, I mean, Ron's in contact more of them than I am, but I'm in contact from the Warren Cleat Club. But yeah, we're a pretty close group, and we were then, and we knew it. And there weren't a lot of things to do either. In Richmond, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but there wasn't a whole lot in Richmond. There's one, the Burger Brawl was about the only place you get French fries. And so it was a pretty close group. And only a few guys had cars, and it was, you walked everywhere. And the girls had curfews.
Did you say this was Coach Kidd's
his first head coach?
His first
year head coaching, yeah.
Okay.
And then we won the OVC in '67 and '68, and the Daugherty and Rice Bowl championship in '67. So we had 3 big events there within a 2-year period for Coach Kidd.
We claim that we started it all. When Coach Kidd started, and he was, 31 years old at the time, and lived down in a little house down the end of the hangar field, which is now Wallace Building. And so it was just a close time. And
not all that older than his players, I guess.
No.
10 years, yeah. 10, 12 years. And he seemed older to us at the time because he was the coach.
Tell folks like myself, who's heard about the Daugherty and Rice Bowl for a long, long time, but how did you get to play in that bowl, and tell us a little more about that?
Well, during the year of '67, we were ranked #1 quite a bit of the time. And you qualified, there were 4 different regions in the country.
They didn't have playoffs in those days.
They didn't have playoffs.
But this wasn't Division I AA. This was...
Well, they didn't call it Division I AA at the time.
But it wasn't division. It wasn't our division, our level.
It was the same, but they just had a different name for
it.
But at that time, there were 4 different regions, and you didn't play for the national championship. You played for one of the bowl games, and you finished in the top 4. You just didn't know where you were. But like I said, we were ranked #1 quite a bit of the time. So when we got to go to the Daugherty and Rice Bowl, that was really a big deal, and it was called the Mid-East NCAA Championship instead of the NCAA Championship. Mm-hmm. We did that. So went to Murfreesboro, Middle Tennessee, and they treated us great there, and it was a wonderful experience.
And you played against whom?
Ball State.
Ball State, and we beat them 27-13. And they outweighed us quite a bit, probably about 50 pounds on the line per a man. And they had about 5 guys that went to the NFL off of their offensive defensive teams. And they were ridiculing us a little bit before the game, and Harry Lenz got upset about that and got us a little fired up about it too. They were calling us something like small, like a high school team or something. So we beat them 27-13, and it was an exciting game. Teddy Taylor got in the backfield, got the handoff from the quarterback, and ran 27-yard touchdown with his high-top black shoes. So that was exciting.
And who were some of the other stars of that game?
Well, Jim Geis was the quarterback, and we had Aaron Marsh as receiver. We had a number of people. Trying to think of some of the
Tazzle.
John Tazzle.
But Aaron Marsh was an All-American
receiver.
All-American receiver.
And played in the pros.
He was drafted. I believe he was drafted 2nd round for the New England Patriots.
And one of the first black football players at EKU.
Right. The very first black football player came from Dayton, Ohio, Dunbar. His name was George Lee. And then Aaron came from Springfield, Ohio, and came here in the same year that Skipper and I came in 1964.